Hello, everybody. I'm Tracy Miranda, and I'm going to speak to you now about unlocking high-performing teams with open source. But first, let me kick off with some introductions. So I am the Executive Director at the Continuous Delivery Foundation, an open source organization I'll be talking a lot more about in this talk. But previous to that, I worked at CloudBees with the Jenkins and Jenkins X open source communities. And I've also been heavily involved with the Eclipse community. So in short, I am a big fan of all things open source and yeah, super big fan of the power of communities. And that's my Twitter handle if you want to get in touch. So to kick off this talk, I'm going to start with this question of what does it mean to be a high performing team, especially in the context of software delivery? In today's world, we see that every business is under tremendous pressure to transform itself into a software business, and delivering software or continuous delivery is a cornerstone to this. So if you think about an organization that can deliver new features faster than its competition, or if you think about an organization that can take advantage of fast feedback to build a deeper relationship with its users, or think about an organization that can pivot when needed to respond to industry and world events, so like we've seen with the recent pandemic. So the key to all of this is continuous delivery of software. And research, we have a lot of research to show that continuous delivery is synonymous with good business outcomes. And in particular, we have this great findings that talk about the difference between those who are really good at software delivery and those who are trying to catch up. So at the very top level, we have what is referred to as the elite performance. And across the board, we have different measures of showing how much more effective they are in terms of how much more code they can push out. So they're 46 times more frequent code deployments. They are over 2,000 times faster than their counterparts, both in terms of getting code out and being able to recover when things go wrong. Now, this research comes from the amazing Accelerate book, which is the partner manual as such to the State of DevOps reports. And I love this quote from that book from one of the key authors, Nicole Forsgren, which says, "Software delivery is an exercise in continuous improvement, and our research shows that year over year, the best keep getting better, and those who fail to improve fall further and further behind." So when we think of a modern organization that has a technology strategy, you can see not only is it key to be able to release software quickly, but we also need to be pretty adept at continuous improvement and making sure we are constantly kind of evolving as things around us continue to do so. And how do we go about doing this? Well, the great thing is that this book, in addition to kind of providing all this research about where different organizations are, also give some recommendations of things that work in the form of what they call capabilities. So the book outlines 24 different capabilities that help drive improvements. And we'll see that of those 24, a full third of them, so 1/8 of them, are what we refer to as continuous delivery capabilities. So specific ways you want to get better at your software delivery to improve your business outcomes. So I'll come back to that a bit later, but before I do, I just want to take a moment to position 3 things that are often used in a somewhat interchangeable and confusing manner, especially if you're new to this space. You might have seen these kind of used in different ways. So these are the terms Agile, CICD, and DevOps. So I'll start with saying like CICD, we tend to refer to it as continuous delivery. That kind of covers the whole holistic flow from the moment you push software to the moment it's delivered into the hands of users. So while there is overlap, each one tends to have a distinct focus. So Agile focuses more on the processes. DevOps focuses on kind of approaching things from a cultural aspect and roles, while continuous delivery will focus on the tools and automation. And it's not to say this doesn't pull in culture, but we lead with tools and automations and use those almost as a way to drive changes in culture. And that's the focus area I'll be talking about specifically. So continuous delivery from an aspect of tools and automation with a view to driving culture. So as I mentioned, continuous delivery, we see that as a software engineering approach in which teams produce software in short cycles, and then they ensure that that software can be reliably released at any time. So we've been doing, as an industry, software continuous delivery for a long time, but some of the things which I'll touch on a bit more later is that we are seeing a big shift in the industry with the rise of microservices and cloud native architectures. This has caused a rise in continuous delivery practices, but it's also affected us to rethink how we approach it. So before I go more into that, I do want to go back to this idea of the benefits of continuous delivery. So sometimes different teams can focus, it's seen potentially as, an IT problem, like can you keep your services up and how fast are you delivering things? But the reality is like the Accelerate and other works in this space have shown that the benefits of continuous delivery are good, not just for your processes and your teams, but also for the organization as a whole to increase your responsiveness, build deeper relationships. And my personal favorite on the team side, it actually creates a high trust culture and reduces burnout, which I think is something we could all, we'd all love to make our work lives as simple as possible, especially in these kind of challenging times. So we know the benefits of continuous delivery, and we have these great works like Accelerate book that tell us how to go about it. But the reality is that when you talk to folks, there's not nearly as much adoption in the space as we think they should be, or that matches with the great benefits. And I think this comes down to these three reasons. So first of all, we talked about the rise of microservices and cloud native architectures. So while these dramatically improve what we're capable of, especially when it comes to scaling, it also comes with some challenges. So before, teams were working on monolithic code bases and deploying a monolithic application, and they only had to worry about a small number of environments. But now we have this proliferation of environments, distributed systems, and code bases, which are also kind of broken up. And it makes continuous delivery more important and more challenging. The second big factor is just the sheer number of tools. We've seen a rise in the number of tools in this landscape, and it becomes really challenging for users to figure out what works for their use case. And often putting together different tools to create a full solution is left as a trial and error lesson to the user. And then on top of that, new paradigms are coming along at a faster rate than ever before. If you think about things like we've just had cloud native, and then we've also got things like serverless and machine learning. So the rate of change in technology at the moment is just incredible. And then you couple onto that this third challenge, that change is hard. So people and organizations have limits on the amount of change they can absorb all at once. Well, that's certainly what we thought. But in the last few months, we've all learned to keep our distance, wear a mask, and wash our hands like we're going into surgery. Well, most of us have. But change is hard unless we have this real sense of shared purpose. And then it turns out we can adapt faster than we think we can. But it does tend to be a big challenge for us, especially in environments where people aren't aligned. So I think this sums up our present. We know what continuous delivery is, why we should do it, but we still need to figure out the how and how to overcome these challenges. And I think for many of us, that's why we're all here today, to just try and level up on that side of things. And some of the approaches we're looking at, I won't go into these, but I expect we'll have many of the speakers kind of covering these different spaces. We'll see different things evolving to help solve the problems of microservices, help reduce the impact of code changes and get us to the promise of frequent deploys. We have cloud native technologies emerging to give us this kind of better on-demand elasticity, and then paradigms like GitOps to promote true automation. And then when it comes to protecting users in the organization, you'll see things in the category of DevSecOps. So all of these are different approaches depending on what challenge you're trying to tackle. And back in March 2019, the Continuous Delivery Foundation was launched in a way to help tackle some of these challenges and bring together the community around continuous delivery and open source. So we launched, we have a whole set of members, not just kind of vendor members, but also end user companies, a lot of folks in the fintech space, as well as universities. So it's a pretty diverse group all coming together to say, hey, can we work together? And we sort of see ourselves as this neutral home for collaboration in the space. And more specifically, we have this mission that we are seeking to improve the world's capacity to deliver software with security and speed. So like in technology, we have the saying that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. And that's very, very true in this space. So the idea with the Continuous Delivery Foundation is to help level that playing field and make sure everybody can get to a good place with their software delivery. So I want to talk briefly about 3 ways we're helping to do that in the industry. So the first one is driving continuous delivery adoption. And there's a number of different initiatives we have in this space, so I'll share a couple. We have put together a continuous delivery landscape. For those of you familiar with the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and their landscape, this is inspired by that, but with a specific zoom in on the software delivery, what are traditional approaches and cloud native approaches, and all the things you need to put together. So it's not just continuous integration and deployment, but you've got a whole host of things. And we're just trying to give a high level view of tools in the space. The other focus we have is we have a very active end user council, and the end users are members who are using continuous delivery solutions to deliver software. And they want to get together and have discussion on topics, whether it's how to deal with specific governance or compliance issues in their industries, or security, or developer productivity is a hot topic. So we have an end user regular monthly meetings, and they've also put together a plan and an editorial calendar about topics that they're hoping to both get better at in their organizations and help drive some clarity for the industry as a whole. So that is the End User Council, and one of the key way we're helping drive adoption. The other element from CDF is around open source projects. So at our core, we host and sustain several open source projects. The foundation started off with 4 founding projects. Jenkins, which everybody uses, and I'm sure many of you know, and Spinnaker, the amazing technology that came out of Netflix. But we also have the newer projects, Tekton and Jenkins. And I like to look at it from the perspective of technology adoption. So in the one hand, we have a lot of folks using Jenkins and Spinnaker. But the other side, when it comes to cloud native technologies, it's still in kind of the innovators and early adopters, and we're still seeing a lot of rapid adoption as people look at different approaches, especially based around Kubernetes. And one thing I wanted to mention here, going back to the Accelerate book, we do see the research that high performers do leverage open source software, and there's some good data there about how folks are likely to make better use of open source software. And these people who are in the top tier of elite performers, as they're called, are also more likely to be expanding their use of open source software. And I think you can see a couple of reasons for this. So for one, they're not reinventing the wheel, trying to kind of recreate technology that's already out there and exists and is well supported. But the other way is by leveraging open source, they're also able to kind of keep up with an industry that's changing quickly. And again, if we kind of go back to this idea of here's this long list of different capabilities we need to get good at if we want to improve our organizations. One of the questions we ask ourselves is, which of these can we leverage tools, and in particular open source tools, to help with? And I think there's definitely a good subset of those. Tools won't help fix everything about your organization. They are going to be cultural and team issues you have to address, but I dare say they will go a long way to help you have some good foundations, and particularly projects like Tekton, which is fast emerging as kind of the standard for cloud native continuous delivery. Definitely gives you ways to set up a good groundwork for some of these things. So the final thing focus from the Continuous Delivery Foundation is just making that whole journey around continuous improvement easier. And with this, we want to also take kind of an industry approach. So we have lots of like-minded folks in our community who can see the need to solve kind of this very fragmented landscape. And one of the ways we're going about doing this is really looking to promote interoperability. So, can we standardize the building blocks we have into shared APIs? Can we build an ecosystem of integrations and plugins around these interfaces? And, by doing that, can we improve the state of delivery for the entire industry? And the Tekton project, which I mentioned, is kind of one of the projects at the core of that, helping drive for common APIs and metadata. But in general, we have a dedicated working group, which is open to anybody who wants to participate. We meet twice a week, and we have discussions around potential areas for bringing tools together. And in fact, one of the recent initiatives, this group spun out a special dedicated group focusing on standardizing events in CI/CD systems. So sort of saying, can we have a standardized industry way to think about events that are triggered in CI/CD pipelines, so we can all agree on that, and all the various tools can use them in the same way, and then that allows us to have these building blocks we can lay upon. So I encourage you to check out the Interoperability SIG as well as the events special interest group. So this has been a quick kind of whistle-stop tour of all the high-level areas. Just to kind of wrap it up, I want to highlight again these ideas from Accelerate book. These are kind of the capabilities we're all looking to continuously improve on. And so from that book, we know what it means to be a high-performing software delivery team. Accelerate gives us these steps that we can use if we continuously improve at that, and particularly our continuous delivery practices that will help us get better. That being said, we're kind of operating in this almost quicksand type of environment because microservices and emerging cloud native technologies are changing the game, and we've got to contend with that change as hard as it is. But I really see open source as something that can help in this journey. So on the one hand, I encourage folks to check out open source technologies to make the most of your software delivery, but also with the ethos of open source communities and the places like our end user council and our interoperability groups, we have people coming together to make that journey easier. And I'll finish by kind of saying, if you want to know more or kind of find ways to engage with the different communities, I think the quick hack is to join us at our next conference, CDCon, which is running on June 23rd and 24th. As a virtual event, we'll have a lot of interactive sessions with some of our community. We also have some co-located events around like a GitHub Summit and a Spinnaker Summit the day before. And it's as much fun as we can make it in a virtual event. People come along, their pets come along, we take selfies and just learn a lot and share that community spirit. So I'm going to leave it there, but thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I welcome you to join the community building the future of continuous delivery. Thank you very much.